Welcome to the Forefront Radio. Welcome to the Forefront Radio. We're about to get started in just a bit. If y'all could do me a huge favor, tap the screen, get the like option, and share the room with at least 10 people. We'll get started in just a bit, y'all. All right, y'all, let's get started. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Forefront Radio, where the truth does not fear investigation. I'm your host, Afia Levi. Today we dig deep into Deuteronomy 28, the blessings and the curses, and how those prophetic warnings echo in tragic history of the East African slave trade that happened to our ancestors. A lot of times we talk about captivity in the west coast of Africa and in the Americas, but rarely do we talk about what happened in East Africa. We're going to read scripture, we're going to examine history, we're going to listen for spiritual and human consequences that still cry out today. So stay with us. We're going to start off with the words given by Moses himself to our ancestors when we were coming out of Egypt. It was a promise and it was a warning. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. It says, but it shall come to pass, meaning it will happen in the future, if you will not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. Now, what people fail to realize is that the voice of God is this Bible. The prophets foretold about this, but many of our people don't pay attention. Watch this. But it shall come to pass, meaning it will happen in the future, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do, that's an action word, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Now, let's examine this passage. Moses said that generational curses would fall on a particular demographic, a particular ethnic class. When you examine the people that claim to have lineage in the lost tribes of Israel, celebrating the religion of Judaism, they don't fall under this category. Many religious converts from Europe claim to be the chosen people, but they don't want to claim the curses. They want to claim all the blessings and a connection to the Creator, but they don't want to take the generational curses for disobedience. Watch this. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 25. Here's an example of the generational curses that happen on the real Hebrews, which will prove black history in the Bible. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. Right now in Gaza, are the blue and white flag folks being smitten by their enemies? No. The prophecy is that the children of Israel will be smitten before their enemies. Watch this. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed, meaning out of the Holy Land, into all the kingdoms of the earth. Y'all, Polish people that converted to a religion called Judaism, did that happen to them? Did that happen to them? The answer is no. It didn't happen to them at all. What about Germanic people that converted to a religion called Judaism? Did they get scattered into all the 4 corners of the earth? Did they get taken to Australia as captives? New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, China, Iran, Iraq as captives? No. This Bible is talking about a specific group. And it's not the folks that converted to religion that started in Africa. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. Listen close. Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. It says, and the Lord shall scatter thee, among all people, from the one end of the earth even to the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. So the two major religions that held our people in captivity was Christianity and Islam. Through colonization, through captivity, we were scattered and displaced as an Afro-Hebraic diaspora. So our people are the ones that fit the generational curses because we got taken out of the so-called Middle East and displaced into Babylon, displaced into Iran, displaced into Persia, displaced into India, displaced into China, displaced into the Ottoman Arab countries, displaced all over the planet as captives and forced to worship other religions, other gods. This did not happen to European people that converted to a religion called Judaism. This happened to black people all throughout East Africa, all throughout West Africa, all throughout the Americas. This Bible is talking about us. This Bible is our history. Deuteronomy 28 verse 68. Watch this. This is the heavy hitter. This is the nail in the proverbial coffin. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt, aka slavery, again with ships. With what? With ships. What group of people were taken on cargo slave ships all across the planet? Did that happen to European people? No. Did that happen to Ashkenazim? No. Did that happen to Polish people? No. Y'all, this Bible talking about us. This Bible is talking about us. So who was taken on ships? And it wasn't a yacht. It wasn't a cruise liner. It wasn't a speedboat. It was cargo trade systems that were established by the Europeans and established by the Arabs. Many people don't know about the Indian Ocean slave trade. Many people don't know how this was called the Eastern Ethiopian Ocean. Then they retitled it to the subcontinent of India, where our people were scattered and displaced all across the Indian Ocean, all over the planet, y'all. Watch this. By the way whereof I spake unto you, thou shalt see it no more again, meaning you will not see your homeland again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you, meaning no man shall save you. These words are stark. They pair an explicit spiritual condition to a specific people. If you will not hearken, with concrete national calamities, defeat by your enemies, held into captivity, exiled from your homeland, scattering, servitude, and even ships, y'all. Come on, y'all. Who is this talking about? This is black history in the Bible, folks. The imagery of being brought again to slavery with ships has haunted students of scriptures for centuries. But how do we connect the prophetic language to a historical reality? Today, we're going to focus on one region that tragically saw these echoes: East Africa, the Indian Ocean, and the Swahili coast of the slave wars against our ancestors. Let's talk about the East African Indian Ocean slave trade. Many historians emphasize the Transatlantic War. That is essential. But East Africa suffered centuries of captivity as well. An Indian Ocean world of seaports, dhows, caravans, and markets. From the ancient Zanj uprisings in the Persian Gulf to the Swahili coast cities to the tragic rise of Zanzibar as a 19th century slaving hub under the Omani influence, millions of so-called East Africans were captured, enslaved, and transported across seas and deserts, y'all. Let's get into this a little bit deeper, y'all. Let's get into this deeper, y'all. Let's talk about what happened in Zanzibar. Let's talk about the Zanzibar slave port. Let's talk about that briefly. A lot of people don't know this history, so we're going to talk about the history that they don't share during Black History Month. This is on Wikipedia, so anybody could readily look this up on the encyclopedia. Captivity existed in the Sultanate of Zanzibar, until 1909. Captivity and a trade war existed in the Zanzibar archipelago for at least 1,000 years. So why they don't tell you during history class, right, that this has been going on for well over 1,000 years. During the 19th century, the rise of a large-scale clove of coconut plantations under Omani Arab rule to a significant expansion of a slave system. By some estimates, captive people constituted up to 2/3 of the archipelago's population at its peak, y'all. At its peak. That's according to the book known as, let me get up the essay. This is an essay from Professor P.S. Gupta, which is called The Slave Trade at Zanzibar and the Role of the Kuchis. It's Proceedings of the Indian History Congress. Okay, and it gives the dates. It gives from 1281 to 1294. Okay, Zanzibar was internationally known as a major player in the Indian Ocean trade war, aka slave trade, where captives from the Swahili coast of Eastern Africa were trafficked across the Indian Ocean, aka the Eastern Ethiopic Ocean, to Oman in the Arabian Peninsula during the Zanzibar slave trade. During the 19th century, Britain conducted an international abolitionist campaign against the Sultanate and restricted and eventually abolished the slavery and slave trade in Zanzibar via the number of treaties between 1822 to 1897, resulting in the end of the slave trade and finally the end of slavery itself in 1909. Y'all, most of our people never heard about this stuff. Most of our people in America never heard about this history. Some of y'all listening right now on TikTok and YouTube, this is the first time you're ever hearing about this. But we're going to talk about it here on the Forefront Radio because we want to bring to light all the things that are happening and prove Black history in the Bible. Let's get into some history. It is known when the trade war from Zanzibar started, and it may have existed also before the Arabs arrived in the area in the 8th century. So with the start of Islam in the 8th century, you have this trade war going on. During the Middle Ages, the Zanzibar archipelago became part of the Swahili culture and belonged to Kilwa Sultanate, which was a center of the Indian Ocean slave trade between East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. During the Middle Ages, and the islands of the Zanzibar archipelago are known to have traded in ivory and slaves, long before it became part of the Oman Empire. So now watch this. Let's go to the Bible. Does the Bible say that the children of Israel were sold as captives to the Arabs? Watch this. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 14. Listen close. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 14. It says, "Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled?" Wait a minute. God is comparing the children of Israel to captives who are spoiled, who are destroyed. They don't know their identity. They don't know where they come from. They converted to a religion called Islam, and still today they're practicing the religion of those that oppress them. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 3. Who was it that held these individuals in captivity? Watch this. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 3. Let's start at verse 2. "Lift up thine eyes unto the high places, and see where thou hast not been lying with, corrupted with. In the ways have thou sat for them as the Arabian in the wilderness." So these Ishmaelite Arabs and Ottoman Turks and Swahili Coast Arabians in the desert had us in captivity, all in the Arabic areas from the Arabian Peninsula all the way down to Tanzania, all the way down to Zanzibar. So Mozambique was impacted, Zambia was impacted, Malawi was impacted, Kenya was impacted, Tanzania was impacted, Uganda was impacted. All of these areas up and down the east coast of Africa was impacted by this. Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia. Most of y'all Somalians that are in Islam right now don't know that you're really a Jew. Most of you Tanzanians and Malawians don't know that you're really a Hebrew according to the Bible. It says, as the Arabian in the wilderness, and thou hast polluted the land with thy whoredoms, meaning idolatry, and with thy wickedness, meaning you started bowing down to Allah now, instead of the God of the Bible. Instead of the real creator, you started to serve all the 300 and 400 gods of the Ishmaelite Arabs. You understand? You understand? Watch this. Let's go back to Wikipedia. Watch this. It says, during the Middle Ages, the Zanzibar archipelago became a part of the Swahili culture and belonged to the Kilwa Sultanate, which was a center of the Indian Ocean slave trade between East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Where did we just read about the Arabs? We read it in the Bible. We read it in the Bible. We read it in the Bible, y'all. So this is matching history with prophecy. Black history in the Bible. Hey! Y'all, this book is talking about us. This book is talking about us. The Bible is about us. It says, during the Middle Ages and the islands of the Zanzibar archipelago are known to have traded in ivory and slaves long before it became part of Oman. In the 1690s, it finally became united with the Oman and in the Omani Empire, 1696 to 1856. Watch this, watch this, watch this. Watch this. Notice it talks about ivory and slaves, right? Notice it talks about ivory and slaves. I wonder where I can look up in the New Testament where it's talking about ivory. Let's look that up real quick. Let's look that up real quick. Watch this. 1 Kings chapter 10 verse 18. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory, and overlaid it with the best gold. Meaning what? King Solomon, one of the wisest black kings to live on the planet, he was able to have a throne overlaid with gold, and the throne was of ivory. Where did they get the ivory from? Africa. The Bible is more connected to Africa than to Europe. Where does ivory come from? It comes from elephants, smart guy. It comes from elephants. Where do they get these large major elephants to get the ivory from? In Africa. Y'all understand that? Watch this, watch this, watch this. Let's go to one of the other descendants. Watch this. 1 Kings chapter 10 verse 22. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Hiram was the king of Tyre. Tyre is modern day Lebanon, which was owned by black Zidonians, also known as Canaanites. Once in a 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver and ivory and apes and peacocks. Where did these animals come from? Africa. Where does the ivory come from? Africa. Where did they get the apes? From Africa. Where did they get the peacocks? From Africa. Watch this, watch this, watch this. Let's go to Revelation chapter 18, verse 12. Revelation chapter 18, verse 12. It says, the merchandise of gold and of silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all Thyan wood and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of precious wood, and the brass and of iron and of marble. So notice, y'all, notice that all of this is showing us the connection of Africa and the Bible. The connection of Africa and the Bible. Watch this. And cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beast and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. Wait a minute. Hold on a second, y'all. So the Bible is telling us, y'all, that the people that were held as captives, right, were the Israelites. They were the captives, the souls of men that were taken, and ivory and slaves are mentioned in the same passages of the Bible. And we just read it in the Wikipedia article. Let's read it again in the Wikipedia article. It says, Wikipedia article, it says, right here, East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula during the Middle Ages, and the islands of Zanzibar archipelago are known to have traded in ivory and slaves. Ivory and slaves. So the same thing we're reading here, y'all, is in the Bible. So black history is in the Bible, y'all. We are the real Hebrews of the Bible. The people that were taken as captives were the Hebrews. Watch this, watch this. The slave trade consisted of a third of the income of the sultanate alongside ivory and cloves. The slave dhows, aka ships, were often rented of commercial ventures. Can somebody tell me where we just read in the Bible where it was talking about ships? Somebody might say, well, forefront, you're reading Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, but I don't quite believe Deuteronomy 20:68. Do you have another scripture to back up your thesis? Sure, we sure do. We got scriptures on top of scriptures for days. Let's go to Job chapter 9, verse 26. Let me show you the dhows. Watch this. They are passed away as the swift ships, as the swift ships, as the swift ships, as the eagle that hasteth to the prey. You see what the Bible says? Do you see what the Bible says, y'all? The Israelites are passed away as the swift ships, as the eagle that hasteth towards the prey. Let's go back to Wikipedia. The slave dhows, aka ships, were often rented of commercial ventures, and they were a crew of a mix of Arab, Swahili freemen and captives, with the profit divided via an owner-captain crew share system. Let's talk about the northern slave route. Zanzibar was united with Oman in the Omani Empire, and the history of its trade wars against the indigenous inhabitants was therefore intimately linked with the history of Oman. Meaning what? Oman would not become a strong country or nation without captivity, y'all. All of these European nations and Arabic nations would not be at the status it is right now without the formation of these trade wars that happened where they took captives. So when we talk about global reparations, the whole planet belongs to us now. We are going to rule over this planet when Christ comes back on the scene. All of these nations that had us in oppression, they're going to pay for the evils they've done for centuries, y'all. For centuries. Believe what the Bible says. Watch this. Slaves from the Swahili coast were transported to Zanzibar, from Zanzibar to Oman, and from Oman to Persia, and the rest of the Arabian Peninsula and the Middle East. So we got Oman mentioned here, we got Zanzibar mentioned here, we got Persia mentioned here. Does the Bible mention Persia? It sure does. Let's go to Esther. Let's go to Esther chapter 1. Watch this. Let's go to Esther chapter 1, verse 1. Let's go to Esther chapter 1, verse 1. Watch this. Watch this. Esther chapter 1, verse, let's start at verse 2. It says that in those days that the king Ahasuerus sat on his throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the third year of his reign, he made a feast unto all the princes and his servants, the power of Persia, and Media. So the so-called Iranians and the Medes, aka the Elamites and the Persians, right? The Elamites and the Medes, they were the ones that were responsible for holding our people in captivity. The nobles and the princes of the provinces being before him, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and honor of his majesty, many days, even 180 days. Now, what was the area that he was ruling over? What was the area that he was ruling over? Watch this. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this Ahasuerus which reigned from India to Ethiopia, from India to Ethiopia. So the Persian territory of the Medes and the Persians was from India all the way to the Congo region. All the way to the Congo region, because old Ethiopia was the Congo region, not modern day Ethiopia, which was called Abyssinia or the kingdom of Axum. We're talking about the ancient Ethiopia of the Congo region, all the way down to South Africa. So this shows you the Indian Ocean slave trade right here in the Bible. The Persian trade right in the Bible. Who was held as captives? The Israelites. The Israelites were held as captives by the Persians. Let's go to the book of Daniel. Watch this. Let's go to the book of Daniel, chapter 6, verse 1. Watch this. Let's go to Daniel chapter 6, verse 1. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, meaning the 120 provinces we were talking about, which should be over the whole kingdom, over these three presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give account to them, and the king should have no damage. So the first black president was not Obama. The first black president was Daniel. He was presiding over the kingdom of Persia, the Persians and the Medes. Watch this. Before he got to that state, during the kingdom of Babylonian captivity, he was held as a slave. Watch this. Let's go to Daniel chapter 1. Let's go to Daniel chapter 1. It says, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, into Jerusalem and besieged it. So the Babylonians invaded Northeast Africa, Jerusalem, the land of Canaan, which is Africa, right? And then besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasures house of God, of his God. And the king spoke to Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and of the king's seed and of the princes. You find that prophecy in Isaiah chapter 39, where Isaiah told the king Hezekiah that his descendants will be taken as captives by the Babylonians. Watch this. Verse 6. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto them the name of Daniel, Belshazzar, of Hananiah, Shadrach, of Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. Now watch this. Notice these are called the children of Judah. What is the physical description in the Bible of the children of Judah? Let's find out. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 2. It says, Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black. What does the Bible say? They are black. What does the Bible say? They are black unto the ground. And the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. Meaning what? The Jews are black, y'all. The Jews are black. Hey, 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 hey. Y'all, we just read in the Bible that the tribe of Judah, they are black. So who was the people that were taken into captivity by the Babylonians, and then the Persians, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans, and then the Ishmaelite Arabs during the 8th century and onward? The Israelites, the real Hebrews. Y'all understand that? Let's go back to the article. Watch this together. Zanzibar and Oman dominated the Indian Ocean slave trade during the 18th and 19th century. This continued until after the union between Zanzibar and Oman was broken in 1856. And the Sultanate was split in the Sultanate of Zanzibar and the Sultanate of Muscat and Oman. After the unification of Zanzibar and Oman, slaves became the biggest industry of Zanzibar alongside ivory and clove. So they was trading human beings like clove, you know, those clove leaves, like you make clove tea, right? Or you put cloves in your food to make it smell better, right? These aromatics. And then ivory that comes from elephants in Africa. Watch this. The Arabian slave ships, dhow, were normally rented and were a part of a commercial enterprise with the Arab and Swahili crew, partially or fully held as captives, in which the profit was shared between the owner, the captain, and the crew. The enslaved crew members having to give half of their salary to their enslaver. You can't make this stuff up. So you work a job, but you got to give half of your salary to those that are your employer. Sound like your 401k to me. People think they free when they got to give part of their money to those that they work for. Make it make sense. You got to pay taxes to those that enslave you. Make that make sense. The number of captive traffic is not known, but one estimation is that about 2,250 captives were trafficked between Zanzibar and the Arabian Peninsula between 1700 and 1815. That's way more than that, y'all. It's way, 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 way more than that. Way more than that. It got to be way more than that. Because so many of our people were impacted. So many of our people were impacted. The reference to this is found from Sheriff A. Tlock v. Wahab, which is 2016, The Transition from Slavery in Zanzibar and Mauritius, A Comparative History, Senegal Council for the Development of Social Science Research in Africa, 36. So that was the reference. After 1867, the British campaign against the Indian Ocean slave trade was undermined by Omani slave dhows, meaning ships, using French colors, trafficking slaves to Arabia and the Persian Gulf from East Africa as far south as Mozambique. So you got people from Mozambique that probably live in the Persian area and don't even realize that they're Hebrews. You got people that live in, remember, we just read in the Bible from Persia all the way down to Ethiopia, right? From India to Ethiopia, right? So in between that area, that includes Mozambique, Malawi, the DRC, Kenya, Republic of Congo, Zambia, you understand? Tanzania, you understand? Ethiopia, Oman, all of these areas, you understand? Which the French tolerated until 1905, when the Hague International Tribunal mandated France to curtail French flags to Omani dhows. Nevertheless, small-scale smuggling of captives from East Africa to Arabia continued until the 1960s. So for those of you talking about, oh, slavery was such a long time ago, tell me your parents and your grandparents and your relatives that was born around 1960. You got cousins and uncles and relatives born around 1960s, and that's when they ended it. So that means it's still going on right now. For those people talking about, oh, slavery was such a long time ago, don't talk about it, forefront. We're going to talk about it, damn it. Watch this. Southern slave route. The French islands in the Indian Ocean initially imported their captives from Portuguese Mozambique. So here come the Europeans pretending like they're not involved when they're really involved. Portugal was a major captive holder. You understand? And from Madagascar. But in 1775, the first French slave trader visited Zanzibar and acquired 1,625 captives during his first two visits, which opened the southern route from Zanzibar to French Mauritius, Reunion, and the Seychelles. So that whole entire, those island masses of Mauritius, Reunion, Seychelles, they had captives in that area. So all of these Francophone countries will have people interchangeable between Mauritius, Seychelles, Reunion, Haiti, Dominican, Senegal, right? Burkina Faso, Niger, and all these French-speaking places, Republic of Congo. Anywhere where the French landed, they were taking people back and forth, y'all. So don't get it twisted. Our history is vast, y'all. Our history is vast, more than they even revealed to us. You understand? So now let's talk about the traders. The traders included local raiders, coastal intermediaries, Arab and Persian merchants, and later Europeans and Omani officials. The human routes ran from the interior, from present-day Tanzania, Mozambique, Malawi, Congo, and the Great Lakes region, to coastal markets, to plantations in the Arabian Peninsula, to Persia, to India, and the islands of the Indian Ocean. Transit often involved long, brutal marches. They ain't had no cars, y'all. They ain't had no cars. Our people had to physically walk on foot. Imagine you walking from the state of New York to the Mississippi River. Imagine that's the distance that I'm trying to help you understand. Imagine you had to walk from Florida to another state just to get to the coastal region for them to pick you up and put you on a ship. Chained caravans, then packed on ships, dhows, and brigantines. These ships that carried our people into bondage, families broken, identities erased, languages forced aside. Now you got to speak Arabic. Now you got to speak Portuguese. Now you got to speak French. Hello. Now you got to speak the Persian dialect, Farsi. Hello. Religion, culture, even names were changed. Your name was Zephaniah and they changed it to Muhammad. You understand? Your name was Elisha Bat Israel and they changed your name to another name of another country and another nationality. Now you got an Ishmaelite Arab sounding name. You understand? That's what happened to our people. It says, these are the real consequences behind scripture's language of scattering, exile, and servitude. Let's go to our people being names being changed. Let's go to that real quick. Let's go to Psalms chapter 44, verse 16. Let's go to Psalms chapter 44, verse 16. If you did not know that the Bible is talking about us, it's time to wake up. Psalm chapter 44, let's start at verse 13. It says, thou makest us a reproach to our neighbors, a scorn and a derision to them that are round about us. Thou makest us a byword among the heathen, a shaking of the head among the people. Meaning what? This means our names was changed. This means our identities were changed. We were changed from being Hebrews to now being Arabs, Ishmaelite Arabs. They changed us into bywords. They called us Zanj, Zangji, Abd, which means captive or slave, Abdi. You understand? That's what they called us. They called us terms like Kushi, Zangji, Kunlun in China. You understand? Bantu. These names they changed us to Swahili. They changed our names from being Hebrews to various terms like Sudan, which means land of the blacks. Soyudan. They changed it. They changed us from being Judah to Soyudan. You understand? Watch this. Watch this. My confusion is continually before me, and the shame of my face have covered me. For the voice of him that reproacheth and blasphemeth by reason of the enemy and avenger. All this is come upon us, yet have we not forgotten thee, neither have we dealt falsely in thy covenant. Our heart is not turned back, neither have our steps declined from thy way. Though thou hast sore broken us in the place of dragons, and have covered us with the shadow of death. So, what is the place of dragons? Let me show you. Let me show you what it is. What is the place of dragons and the shadow of death? Let me show it to you. Let's go to first the dragons of Arabia. Let's go to first the dragons of Arabia in the New Testament, in the Apocrypha. Watch this. What is the dragons that are mentioned here? 2nd Ezra chapter 15 verse 29, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, that they which hear them may fear and tremble. So the dragons here mentioned is not just Esau, but this is the dragons of Ishmael, the dragons of Arabia. I hope y'all get it. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Let's go back. Psalms chapter 44 verse 19. Though thou hast broken a sore in the place of dragons, now we know that's the dragons of Arabia, and covered us with the shadow of death. Now what is the shadow of deletion going into? Let's go to Psalms chapter 107. Let's go to Psalms chapter 107. Psalms chapter 107, let's start at verse 10. such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron. So, the shadow of death is going into what? Being shackled and chained with yokes of iron. Watch this. Being held as a captive. Watch this. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 48. Tell me this Bible ain't talking about us. Watch this. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, aka Oman, aka Portugal, aka France. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. What group of people had chains, shackles around their neck as captives? It wasn't Ashkenazi that converted to a religion called Judaism. They never got taken to Mozambique as slaves. They never were in Zanzibar as captives. They never were in Oman as captives, y'all. This ain't happened to Jewish people. It happened to black folks. Families were broken, identities erased, languages forced aside. That happened to us. Let's look at the illustrative examples and personal realities so this doesn't just stay abstract, right? By the 18th and 19th centuries, Zanzibar, under Omani control, became the center of the East African slave trade. The island's clove plantations and the demand across Arabia and Persia drove an expanded traffic in human beings. Captives from the interior were marched to the coast. They were inspected, traded, and loaded onto ships bound for Arabia, Persia, and beyond. Many did not survive the crossing. Why? Because many of them were made eunuchs. Many of them were made eunuchs, and they don't want to talk about the people that did not survive this thing. Those who survived were sold into domestic servitude, plantation labor, or harems. So for those of you talking about we should convert to Islam, to hell with that thing. When you had our women in harems, when you forced our men on plantation labor, when you caused our people to be in domestic servitude, but you want to say, hey, Islam is a religion of peace? That's what you want to say? When they were castrating our sons and messing with our daughters and our wives and our women? You understand? Y'all, it's time to wake up. From a prophetic perspective, notice the elements. Displacement from the homeland, crossing over the seas, being sold into captivity or bondage. They mirror crystal clear the picture of Deuteronomy 28. Exile, ships, and servitude. So who is this Bible talking about? If it ain't about us, who is it talking about? It ain't talking about European folks. So when you're reading the Bible, understand that the Bible is Black history. Now imagine this. A great caravan route moves captives from Africa's interior to the coast. In places like the Nyasa corridor, which is modern-day Malawi and Mozambique border, and the Great Lakes region, slaving raids and warfare grew around the slave economy. Entire villages were destroyed, razed to the ground. Entire peoples were separated by their age and their gender, and children were taken. Again, Deuteronomy's warning of a people scattered among all people records the reality of people being uprooted, dispersed across unfamiliar lands and cultures. Languages and religious practices were suppressed. The spiritual dimension was profound because our people were forced into other systems, worshiping other gods, often compelled or coerced into adopting a new faith that doesn't belong to them, and social roles that they never practiced. You understand? Imagine our Black people always going to Arabs and saying, hey, hello, boss. Hi, boss. That's the new term that they use. They don't say master like they did in Americans. They say boss. So when they talk to Ishmaelite Arabs and East Indians and refer to them as boss, you know that's a slave mindset there. So for those of you that are in East Africa, you should wake up and know the truth. You are the Hebrews of the Bible. This book is about you. This Bible is not about European history. Jesus is not a European. Christ is not a European. He is your savior, and he is a black man from the tribe of Judah with feet so dark it looked like it burned in a furnace. Let's dive deeper into this thing, y'all. Let's dig deep. Let's dig deep. Let's contemplate on this thing. There are two central interpretive moves we must keep clear: the moral cause and the prophetic implications. So number one, the moral cause. Deuteronomy 28 frames national disaster as consequences of turning away from God's commandments. Historically, some interpreters read the calamities that befell Israel as direct punishments for covenant breach. So let's look at the prophetic implications now. Other interpreters see Deuteronomy 28's language as a pattern. Nations that break God's covenant experience scattering, slavery, and exile. So what nations were taken into captivity? These are reoccurring motives in world history. In this understanding, those of the East African, West African, and other slave trades, right, show a pattern of exile, suffering exactly described by Moses. You understand? So just because we're reading these things about the prophecies that took place, it doesn't mean it's an excuse for the perpetrators. The traders, the enslavers, the empires that profited are morally responsible, and they're going to be held accountable by God, because prophecy that names calamity does not remove the agency or the guilt of those who commit the crime. Meaning what? There's no statute of limitations with God, y'all. You understand? Watch this, watch this, watch this. A lot of nations will say, well, God allowed you to go into captivity, so why am I held responsible for what your ancestors did wrong? Watch this. Exodus chapter 21 verse 16. And he that steals a man and sells him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to deletion. You hear what the Bible say? So the Bible says, judgment upon the man that steals another man and sells him. Meaning what? We were sold as captives throughout East Africa. We were sold as captives throughout West Africa. And we were sold as captives all the way into Persia, all the way into India. None of these nations are going to get away with that. None of them. The Ishmaelite Arabs are not going to get away with it. The Ottoman Turks are not going to get away with it. Oman, Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, Istanbul, Persia, right? Pakistan, India, Nepal, Indonesia. None of these nations that held our people as captives will get away with it. You understand? None of them. Watch this, watch this, watch this. Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 13. It says, woe unto him that builds his house by unrighteousness and his chambers by wrong, who that uses his neighbor's service without wages and gives him not for his work. Meaning what? These nations are going to get judged for the evils that they did. Beyond the physical horrors, slavery produces spiritual consequences: a loss of memory, forced assimilation, broken lineage. For the Afro-Hebraic people and communities tracing their identity to Israelite roots, this is not merely historical trivia. I want you to understand this. It is a wound in collective identity. Deuteronomy 28 warns us about serving other gods. In the case of East Africa, forced conversion, syncretism, and imposition of foreign culture systems contribute to religious displacement. That loss of our spiritual practices found in Torah, of names and genealogies being scrubbed, is part of the curse's effect on the person and the nation. You understand? We have so many of our people that are lost in the identity of being Arab. So many black folks that think they're Arab instead of a Hebrew. But it's time to wake up, y'all. The Bible talks about redemption. The Bible talks about restoration. The Bible talks about prophetic hope. The scriptures does not leave us in despair. The prophetic tradition also includes restoration, return, and healing. For the communities affected by the East African trade, restoration works includes this: reclaiming our names, reclaiming our identities, reviving lost languages and liturgy where possible, documenting genealogy and oral histories, and pressing forth the truth of this Bible and reparative justice. Here are some practical steps. Let's preserve the oral testimonies of our ancestors talking about this history and support archives, scholars, and different works on the Indian Ocean slave trade. Let's find repatriated artifacts where appropriate. Let's create memorials and acknowledge the pain and celebrate the resilience of the survivors. This is a call to reflection, y'all. If you're listening to this and you are from East Africa, consider what this history asks of us today. We must name the evil. We must care for the descendants. We must teach the truth. And we